Hey, hey everyone, Shauna here, and we are back for another roundtable. This time we're with Katrina Belmont, and we are going to be talking about group practices and building out an expansive practice going beyond the couch. So, first, we're going to introduce Katrina, and then we're going to go from there.
Hi, yes, my name is Katrina. I have been a therapist. I graduated Lenore University in 2013, and have been licensed as a LCAS, which is Licensed Clinical Addiction Specialist, as well as LCMHC, Licensed Clinical Mental Health Counselor. And I started my private practice in 2019. So have been really in that space since then, building and went completely into private practice, no other income, in 2021. And so that really kicked things off. And before that, I did various work, working with people on probation and parole, with addictions. And then I worked in managed care, working on the psychiatric floors at our two local hospitals. So a wealth of random experiences that have kind of led me here.
Amazing. Thank you for that introduction. I want to jump right in because you did something very similar to what I did years later, right? You had a cushy corporate job with working with managed care, and you left your cushy corporate job to start your private practice. So tell us more about how that happened for you and what came up and what led you to that decision.
Yeah. And I would just really talk transparently on this one because it's not I can't really tie it into a pretty little bow, which you may understand by that. But
Yeah.
I loved a lot of aspects about managed care. Being on the backside and seeing all the moving parts, there's something beautiful about that.
Mhm.
However, something I have a lot of clients that are in similar fields or the same field. And a lot of what I talk about is, the system is so broken, unfortunately. And you're this small little minute piece in it. And are you going to make a difference? Sure, of course, but at the same time, you've got to take care of yourself because there's always going to be more that they're going to ask of you that you need to do, that you could be doing. And you begin to see that. And working on the psychiatric floors, it was really, really transparent. It was sometimes just, how do we get them transportation? They don't have anywhere to live. They have nowhere to go. We're just going to worry about their transportation, and it's like you start to see that and it really weighs on you. So I did 6 years on the psychiatric floors, and I say it was a few too many years, and it was great experience, and I'm so grateful for that. But it was time. And seeing some of the background of things, you also kind of see where things maybe are a little crooked, a little not aligned with what I felt like I wanted to be a part of. And it was at one point like, this is it, I've made it. This is the dream job, managed care, like, and so I really had to do some self-reflection, and it kept feeling less and less aligned with me and what I wanted to do and the differences I wanted to make. And I could tell myself just getting so burnt out and not caring. It was like, okay, let me hurry up and get this paperwork done. Let me check these boxes. Let me finish this. And so the balance for me was, well, let me just do some part-time private practice work. And the more I got into it, the more I was like, oh, I like this. This is good. This is good, for so many reasons. And so that's really where I was just like, I want to make this happen. And then I planned on branching off in 2020. And with COVID, I was like, all right, going to keep the cushion job for a little bit longer and just do this practice part-time. So I really kept that part-time practice till 2021, and I just made that leap. Actually, it was around this time. It was June of 2021, and I was just like, let's do it. Let's see.
hmm I think I agree so much. For me, I loved my cushy corporate job. I felt well taken care of. I had an amazing manager, and I learned so much. And I agree. It's like when you work in managed care, you kind of like see the full system. Like because I started off in community mental health and then I worked in a hospital system. And so like you see all of these bits and pieces, but like you in managed care, you kind of like see the whole system at play. And it was very much a little bit of politics in there, but also kind of like, oh, like, well, why don't we just do this? And it's like, well, no, you have to go through XYZ before you can get back to ABC. And so it just always felt like this zigzag that didn't always make a lot of sense. And part of the reason why I opened up my private practice was because like I just needed a little bit more freedom and flexibility to do things that felt logical and made sense, especially for like the clients that I wanted to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can completely get that. And it started off just like that for me as well. Like private practice on the side, and then, still working my cushy corporate job until it came to a point where I was like, I think it's time to make the shift out. So for you, you've made the shift out, and then what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was terrifying, and I did a lot of like self-reflection in that period of time. And one of the cool things that I've kind of spent some time with digging into is like learning, kind of your typical that most people know is like the Myers-Briggs, right? Your personality type. But there's so many ways to learn about that. And one of the ones I found most recently is called your human design, which if you haven't ever done it, so cool, so amazing. I know about tiny little bit in the grand scheme of things, but what I do know is part of what I began to realize through this reflection period was my personality type really does shine in this kind of role, right? Where I am taking the lead a little bit. I do have more autonomy of my time and my hours. I don't do as well, having that corporate ladder, I guess you could say, above me. It's something that my natural personality type kind of rebels against. So I really was able to kind of lean into it the more I started to learn about my personality type and where I thrive. But it was scary. And we're down here in the Bible Belt South, and I work with religious trauma, and I work with the LGBTQ plus IA population. So it was one of those things where it was like, I wanted to be strategic to hold safe spaces, but I also had to be careful.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I hate to have to say that, but it's the world we live in, And so when it came to advertising, when it came to some of these things in our small community, I really had to strategize on how I wanted to do that and how much I wanted to put it out there versus keeping that kind of quiet, safe space for the clients. I don't know if that really makes sense, but that was a lot of that beginning journey is finding that balance between making sure people knew that I was an advocate and a safe space while also holding that safe space for them. Does that make sense? I don't know if
It
I articulated
absolutely
it
makes
that
sense. And I want to say, like, I completely totally get that because where I live, it's always been like a very quiet place, and if you're like new here, you don't really understand any place that you go, you don't always understand like the intricacies and the dynamics and like even the politics of the area until like years later. And I've been here since about 2013. And like it just feels like the little space that I'm in has just kind of like the cap is blown back and it's now up and coming. But in those little, in that time where things were like developing and it felt really quiet, it also felt kind of like, well, where is certain spaces, right? Like, where are these things, and how do we give those certain spaces honor so that they can continue to thrive, but also be protected?
Yes. Yeah, 100%, 100%. So that was a lot of me building up my practice was just testing those waters out within our community, and wanting to be a voice for those because a lot of times those populations that I mentioned don't feel like they have a voice in these communities that are smaller, rural, more southern, And so that was such an important mission that I didn't even realize I was going to get on when I started with that. But I'm proud to say I think I've really grown that. And I don't advertise anywhere that I work with religious trauma. But it's kind of word of mouth that's gotten, and it's been such a cool journey to see these people reach out to me and literally say, no offense, but if you're religious, that's not, and I'm like, this is a safe, I'm able to say this is a safe space, this isn't, I'm not going to be quoting you Bible verses, let's work through this trauma and see where you need to align and move forward. So that's where I really grew, in our world, the niche, to figure out what the populations I wanted to work with and where I wanted to specialize. And so I really just started growing from there. And then I did start a group practice about a year later, and started growing that. I think at one point I had 6 therapists working for me, which was its own learning curve and experience. And of course, financially was nice. But it was a big weight to carry to make sure that these therapists were, hopefully, you hope you're not in sessions with them, doing the right thing and practicing what feels right. And again, the safe space that I created was so important for me within my practice to make sure they were aligning with that as well. And so I did a group practice for about 2 years. And last year, I ended up going back to a solo practice, just so that I can focus more on me and let release some of those other responsibilities, to kind of put it in a quick little nutshell there.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I am so glad that you brought that up about group practice because I think I've said this before, but I think a lot of therapists aspire to the group practice as kind of like, oh, the ultimate thing that you can do with your business. And
Mhm.
I found that many therapists have gotten into group practice and they don't always enjoy it, or they don't always want to manage it because it's such a big feat and there is so much into it that it's not necessarily a passive income. It's like it's another form of your business. And so not everyone really enjoys that when it comes to group practice. And so that kind of leads them into trying to figure out other ways to create that expansive income.
Yeah. And I'll share real quick, just two little quick stories. And again, obviously I'm not going to say any names or anything, but what ended up happening was, unfortunately, one of my therapists, I found out, was not billing correctly. She was seeing clients for 30 minutes and billing for an hour session. But
Oh
I had,
no.
I if one of the mothers wouldn't have reached out to me and asked about it, I would have never known, right? Because I don't, I'm not following her every session. And then
Right.
another, it came out a little later, another one of my therapists was just saying some things to clients that I do not agree with and align with in the way in which I feel like a therapist should speak to a client. And
Mhm.
that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And of course, I will say I had some amazing therapists that worked for me. Amazing therapists. So it was not all bad, but it was enough to where I just thought the risk was no longer worth the reward of having that.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that that makes sense. And the other thing about it is like, your practice is like your baby. And so it's so delicate and you're so vulnerable with it. And so as soon as we start inviting other people in, it's kind of like you're trusting them to also care for your baby in a
Yeah.
very similar way that you do, where it's almost like, you're building another form of community and you're like, we have this joint mission or this joint passion, please take care of it. And
Mhm.
not everybody always does that.
Yeah. 100%. That's a great way to put it.
So I want to talk about C7 because I just think this is the coolest thing. I remember when I was in community mental health and I was like, there just should be so much more to therapy and a place to really be able to allow for yourself to just get in touch with yourself holistically. And so when I say holistically, I mean everything and not just like, going into therapy, but going into a space where you have more ability to access more. You have someone who's a little bit more well-rounded when it comes to what you can do when it comes to your healing journey.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I get real passionate about all this. So I'll try to kind of summarize it up. But yeah, 3 years ago, I just was really passionate about literally everything you just said. And what I would tell clients constantly is, you can come see me every single week. But if you're eating donuts for breakfast every day and sitting on the couch and binge watching TV 5 hours a day, like, our sessions are only going to hold so much value. Or
Hmm.
on the opposing side, if you're spending 3 hours in the gym a day, right? But you're eating like crap and you're not working through your stuff, like, it's and I hate it because sometimes it feels so much pressure for people, right? And I never want it to feel that way. I want people to see that it's a little bit of it all. It's not perfection, right? But it's like they talk sometimes about the 80-20 rule with how much you eat. Eat 80% and don't get completely full to 100%, right?
Mm.
I take that 80 to 20% rule for our whole lives, right? So 80% of the time, I'm going to bang out some of the best workouts. I'm going to get my 10,000 steps in. I'm going to do the things. I'm going to eat the salads. I'm going to eat the protein, all the good, healthy fats, carbs, whatever. 20% of the time, I am going to have the cupcake. I am going to maybe go have a drink. I am going to have popcorn at the movies, right? And so I think that's the balance I want people to be able to see, and how it doesn't, even though it feels so overwhelming, it doesn't have to be. So 3 years
Mm.
ago, I really wanted to create a wellness space that felt, again, safe, big, big thing for me, but also less pressured. And I'm all for however anybody wants to move their body, do it. But I've noticed some of the spaces that are held for people are a lot of pressure, like, come do this boot camp, come, you need to be at the gym an hour at least a day, and you need to do this, and, run a marathon, whatever. And so for me, it was, yes, move your body, but do it in a way that feels good, in a way that resonates with you. So I opened C7. Most people think C7 stands for like your seven chakras, which is funny because I did not even put that analogy in until after I'd already created it. So I say it kind of has a couple different meanings. But there is, and don't ask me to quote them because I always mess them up, but there is the seven C's of resilience. So my private practice is resilience therapy and wellness. And so the play on that is like C7. So you've got like your seven, it's like connection, community, but it's just all about creating your sense of self and how you show up. And so to me, that was just like, yes, 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 yes. And so we started out, we do Pilates, yoga, bar, and just like have fun with it. I'm really intentional about my instructors that teach, and I teach as well. And so I had a brick and mortar office for 3 years, and then I just branched off, and now I'm doing pop-ups, which is really neat because I get to collaborate with other local, preferably women-owned businesses, but as long as it's a local business, I try to support. So we're all around my community, and we pop up at different locations each day. And so like one day we're at a salon, and we have yoga in the evenings when the place is
Ooh.
closed. We're at a stretch and grow, which is usually for kids, but when they don't have
Yeah.
classes, they hold space there. So we do yoga there. I just finished at a local store called Radii 100, and everything in the store is from a 100-mile radius. Either people make or create or build, and it's at the store. And in the back, we had a class, and then you get to shop and get like 10% off if you took the class, right? So I could keep going about that, but the pop-up was a risk because I was like, I don't know if local businesses are going to want to collaborate. I don't know if people are going to come to pop-up locations everywhere, but it's been really neat. And you'd kind of talked about like collaboration, and I think I love collaboration. It's really where I thrive. And so it's been such a cool space to collaborate with these other businesses and creating something unique and different, to help hold space for people and for them, encourage them to move their bodies.
Amazing. That is so amazing. And like you just touched on something about marketing because a lot of times therapists will start their practice and they're like, well, how do I get more clients in? How do I get more this? How do I get more that? Well, you've started your practice in a community. You have to get out into the community. And that's exactly what you're doing with C7, which is so cool. Like I work specifically with people on the perinatal mental health spectrum, but like if I did something like, oh, I want to work more with couples who have just gotten married, I would reach out to like the local bridal places and see if we can offer a collaboration or do some kind of classes. I can possibly reach out to local hospitals and see if we can host a class, just specifically on mental health, what to expect after the fact. So I think that's really cool of like really engaging the business in the community, and it like you get to have conversations with potential potential clients, right? Like people who align with that. Um, when you first mentioned the pop-up classes, I immediately thought of Stretch and Grow because I know that they go into the schools as well, like the preschools and the daycares. And so like already when you think about yoga, especially for kids in the this area, you're like, oh wait, like there's Stretch and Go. So like I love that you can have that possible association of like Stretch and Go C7. Like that's really cool.
We actually did one of the first pop-ups when I branched off that we did. I do a lot of workshops as well. And this workshop was literally, I just called it mental health and yoga. And it was for women who felt like they have any struggles with mental health. So I literally taught 30 minutes of yoga, and then I just opened the floor up. And it was a moving class when I say that. Like it was so vulnerable. These women just sat and like talked about postpartum depression. They talked about, trying to find their space in life. They talked about maybe not having kids and how that's hard as a woman in a working, woman. I mean, again, I could go in, but everyone just held space for everyone, and it was really cool. And so I'm really hoping to do some more like that as well, because it was just this, again, best of both worlds, moving your body, honoring your body while also honoring your mind and that afterwards kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so, so much.
Mm.
So, what do you feel like the next steps for you? Like, what does that look like in the future?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm really, again, kind of just when I went back to solo practice, it focusing on me, kind of that whole cliche phrase of like practice what you preach. Here I'm constantly telling people to slow down, constantly telling people to honor their bodies, honor their minds. And then here I was going, I have three businesses, right? So I have an Airbnb up in the mountains, I have the fitness studio, and I have my private practice. And it was like, and I'm doing coaching, so it was like, okay, wait a minute. Let me rein it in and see like what still aligns with me. So I really want to do a lot of that practicing what I preach thing. And I
Mm,
think I've already seen where it resonates with clients. Not that I'm telling clients my whole story, but if something comes up, I'll say, well, I went on this solo trip and it helped me, or I've done this and this. So I'm able to really speak from people love when they can relate to others,
mm.
right? We are creatures of connection, whether we're introverted or extroverted. And so I really just want to align with myself even more because I think I'll then be better suited to serve my clients. So this next season for me is just to slow down and align more. I get excited, and so I just grab at things sometimes. I'm like, oh, let's see if this works. Oh, this could be fun. But what I'm really trying to do is make sure that that aligns with me, and that's is intentional effort and energy that I'm pouring into something. So it doesn't just drain me. So I'm pretty excited to see where it goes, but I'm making sure that that is staying in alignment, and that sometimes is like a weekly check in of like, okay,
Yeah,
am I still doing what I need to be aligned with where I am?
that makes a lot of sense. And I love that, staying true to who you are and practicing what you preach, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I'm doing some workshops actually as well. I'd kind of mentioned that. I've got three coming up in July, and these are just virtual workshops. This is another way where I feel like I'm trying to incorporate like mind, body, spirit, as you had kind of talked about.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've got one on July 1st, breaking the imposter syndrome cycle, unlocking your confidence and releasing self-doubt. So that kind of like again, I'm making sure that I'm working on my self-doubt so that I can present these things to my clients or people that join these workshops. And so that's something I'm really wanting to work on too, is like the stuff that we kind of as women, as mothers, that we don't talk enough about. And so that's kind of where my next goal is.
I love that. So where can people find you? Where can they find those workshops that they can sign
Yes.
up for?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm calling this my summer masterclass series. So like I said, the first one's on July 1st, Breaking Imposter Syndrome. The second one's July 15th, Tame the Chaos, Time Management Tools for Women with Distracted, Overloaded, or ADHD Style Brains. And then July 29th is Health, Wellness, and You, a masterclass to build a balanced life and sustainable health. So those are all available through my C7 website, which is literally just www.c7fit.com. And they can do one, they can do all three, and they're virtual Tuesdays at 5:15. So we're trying out this new series, kind of see, I've kind of asked around where are women struggling the most. And these were some of the areas that I felt I was hearing a lot about. And so I'm excited to see where it goes. I think this is another sense of that community we were talking about that I really like to help cultivate and build among women, especially.
Thank you so much for that, Katrina. Is there anything else that you want to share, including places where people can find you, whether that's your website, social media, those kinds of things?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a great, like, again, obviously, I think I've gotten this message through, but I just think it's so important whether you're in this field or another field to just stay true to who you are. I always say don't let anyone or anything disrupt your peace. That's not worth it. But yeah, so on social media, C7 Fitness, and then I've got Resilience Therapy and Wellness on Instagram and Facebook. And so that's probably the best places to find me. I do have a weekly newsletter that I get help with from my virtual assistant. I can't take full credit, but it's we've gotten a lot of great feedback, and it's just like a wellness tip, a workout tip, a recipe for the week, so they can get added onto that. I've got a group on Facebook called Balanced Blueprint, and so you can join the newsletter and get that weekly as well. So they can always reach out and find me on social media too, and with any questions.
I love that. And I've seen the I've seen the Balance Blueprint
Yeah,
group, and I really have enjoyed it. I've enjoyed some of the conversations in there,
uh,
and even like there's I think it's Wellness Wednesdays, or is it Winning
yes,
Wednesdays?
yeah,
Um, that kind of like pops up every once in a while, and so like I like to kind of drop in and check out the group every once in a while.
yeah, I appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, though. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for interviewing with me today at this roundtable. Y'all, please go out and check out Katrina and enjoy more roundtables, and I'll see you all next time.